Howdy, folks. My name is Dr. Ed Thomas. I'm with Total Body Healthcare, and I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. Family chiropractor, coming up actually on 27 years of practice now. Doesn't seem that long, but it sure has been. And I really enjoy working with patients, helping them improve their overall health and well-being through my chiropractic care here in my office. But one of the other things that I truly enjoy about practice is being able to educate people on ways that they can improve lifestyle habits so that their health can be improved, theirs and their family's health can be improved on into the future. So that's why I bring this topic to you here, endocrine disruptors and how they affect your health. You may be asking yourself, why is a chiropractor talking about endocrine disruptors? Isn't that more along the medical line? Shouldn't a chiropractor be talking about neck pain or back pain? And I mean, of course, I do talk about that, but I also know over my 27 years of practice, I have kind of figured out that all of our health issues, whether it's a sinus infection or neck pain or whatever your health issue may be, it can be attributed to one of three kinds of stress. There's what's called physical stress, chemical stress, or emotional stress. Physical stress is kind of what we go through on a daily basis. This is where a lot of chiropractors do spend their time because of car accidents or falls, sports injuries, traumas, repetitive stress injuries such as workstation ergonomics. All of those fit into the physical realm. And yes, chiropractic care does a great job with helping folks there. Chemical stress for most folks does boil down to our nutrition. We all could do better with our nutrition. However, endocrine disruptors obviously are chemicals, so they play a role in our chemical stress as well. That's why I want to talk about it tonight. And then, of course, the emotional stress, the worries, anxieties, concerns for the future, all of those play into emotional stress. All three of those stresses are what cause our health issues. And so if we can begin addressing the different stresses that are in our lives, improving them, reducing our exposure to those stresses, then your overall health is going to be improved. And that's one of my missions here with what I do in my practice. So that's one of the reasons why I want to talk about this topic right here, even though it doesn't seem to fit into chiropractic. Another reason why is because over those 27 years, just here, I'd say probably within the last 3 or 4 years, I'm noticing more and more health problems being caused by some of the toxic chemicals that are in our environment. And so again, if we can learn about them, reduce our exposure to them, then it is going to help improve your health on into the future. One thing that I want to encourage you with as we get into this topic, don't let it overwhelm you. You're going to see some numbers tonight that they might blow your mind. Don't let this overwhelm you, because if you're working on reducing your chemical stress and it begins to overwhelm you, then guess what? You're creating an emotional stress. So you're just kind of replacing one stress from the other. So that's why I say don't let it overwhelm you. Do the best that you can when you're looking for the toxins in your environment, but don't create emotional stress about trying to find all of them, because you're not going to. And that's kind of unfortunate. The reason being is because endocrine disrupting chemicals can be all around us. They're man-made, they're natural. They are chemicals that mimic, block, or interfere with your body's hormones. We're going to talk about the endocrine system and what hormones actually do here in a minute, but that's a good definition of what endocrine disrupting chemicals are, is they mimic, block, or interfere with your body's hormones. Now, they can be found in everyday products, whether it's the plastic food packaging, some of our clothing materials, exhaust from cars, herbicides, pesticides. They literally can be all around us. And that's why I say, please don't let it overwhelm you as you're beginning to learn about these chemicals. So let's spend a little time explaining what the endocrine system is. Since we're talking endocrine disrupting chemicals, what is the endocrine system? Well, the endocrine system in your body it's a series of glands that produce hormones, and then those hormones are signaling chemicals for your body to perform certain functions. For instance, What's a good one that most people can understand? Adrenaline. Everybody has heard of adrenaline. That's a hormone. It's released by your adrenal glands. When it's released, it increases your heart rate. It dilates your blood vessels to get more blood out to your muscles so that you can take action. Adrenaline is known as our stress hormone, or one of our fight or flight hormones. So if you're getting into that state of fight or flight, you need more blood going to your muscles so that you can get into that fight, or you can get out and flight away. That's what a hormone does. Is it's a signaling compound, signaling chemical for your body to do something. Well, your endocrine system, one key point I want you to get here tonight is that, excuse me, hormones act in small amounts. So when you feel that a rush of adrenaline, that's actually just a small amount released into your bloodstream. Because it only takes a small amount to initiate the function that the hormone's supposed to do, minor disruptions in your hormone levels can cause major disruptions. If anybody is dealing with any hormone issues, say thyroid or something like that, you can understand what I'm talking about here. Some of the more commonly known hormones are thyroid hormone, as an example. The sex hormones like estrogen and progesterone, testosterone in men. Cortisol is another stress hormone, and I already mentioned adrenaline. This picture here gives you an idea of kind of what it comprises the endocrine system in our body. And again, a lot of these glands you probably have heard of before. I don't need to doctor-splain everything of them. You know what the thyroid is, and the ovaries, the adrenal glands. Again, you probably heard of them. What I do want to do is focus on the top two up there, the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. The hypothalamus in particular is really interesting for chiropractors. My job as a chiropractor is to really focus on your nervous system and get it functioning as best as possible, because your nervous system controls all of the other systems of your body. So that's my number one goal when a patient comes into my office. Well, interestingly enough, the hypothalamus, part of the endocrine system, is also part of your nervous system. It's actually part of the brain. It is made of nerve tissue. That nerve tissue is one of the organizing, coordinating areas of your brain. As the signals come up from your body, the hypothalamus helps organize those signals into what parts of the brain they need to go to. One of the other things that the hypothalamus does is it produces hormones, and those hormones then go work on some of the other glands in the endocrine system. The pituitary gland is much the same. The pituitary gland is called the master gland because of all the other endocrine glands. It has a regulation component in all of them. So in other words, if your body, for instance, if your body needs to produce thyroid hormone, the pituitary gland tells the thyroid to do that. The thyroid doesn't act on its own. The pituitary tells the thyroid, hey, produce thyroid hormone, or down to like the testes to produce testosterone. The pituitary gland controls all of the other endocrine glands that are underneath it. That's why they call it the master gland. Some of the functions that the pituitary gland controls is it helps control growth, sexual development, metabolism. Some folks come to me and they say, well, I have a metabolism issue because I have a slow thyroid. The pituitary gland controls the thyroid. Maybe you actually have a problem at the pituitary gland, not at the thyroid gland. Possibility there. The pituitary gland helps our stress response, lactation. When a mom needs to breastfeed her baby, the pituitary gland's involved with that. Water balance, labor, and childbirth. Again, controlled through the pituitary, way up in your brain. Pain sensation and the immune system all are under the control of the pituitary gland. That's why it's called the master gland. I don't need to explain all of these to you. We could spend hours and hours and hours on it. If you're interested in any of the others, do a simple Google search. You'll find out some good information about how all those other glands work and the hormones that they produce. So here's one of the key concepts for tonight that I want you to get. Hormones are released by the endocrine gland, and they plug in at receptor sites on your individual cells. So this occurs at the cellular level, and it's called a lock and key mechanism. So for instance, let me explain the lock and key mechanism. If I were to come over to your house and try to try my house key in your front door, first of all, that'd be creepy. I wouldn't do that, but if I did, it would be creepy. However, my house key is not going to work in your front door house, the front door of your house, because my key's not made for that lock. The lock and key mechanism for our hormones is much the same. If you make a hormone, that hormone is then supposed to fit into the keyhole on a certain cell. And so if it does that, then the job of that hormone is going to get turned on inside inside that cell, and it's going to do its proper function. If the key doesn't fit in the hole, then that function doesn't take place. That's where endocrine disrupting chemicals can come into play. Because there's three ways, we already mentioned this, there's three ways that endocrine disrupting chemicals work. One of the key ways is they mimic the effects of the hormones. In other words, the endocrine disrupting chemical actually fits into the keyhole on the individual cells, and it makes the effect of that hormone greater. One of the ones that does that is that we're going to talk about a little bit later is a phytoestrogen that we get from soy products. Other ways that EDCs can affect your body is they can bind or block the receptor site. In other words, it's almost be like putting a piece of tape over top of the keyhole and the key couldn't get in, therefore not allowing the hormone to do what it's supposed to do. And then on the interfere part, once your body produces a hormone, it does its job, then the body needs to metabolize that hormone back out of the circulatory system so that the effects of the hormone doesn't continue to be repeated over and over. And it typically does that at the liver. EDCs can block or interfere with the function of metabolizing those hormones in the liver, still causing the effect of the hormone to take place over and over, which we don't want to do in our bodies anyways. So that's ways that the EDCs, the endocrine disrupting chemicals, can affect your body. At this point, you may be thinking, "Wow, how are all of these chemicals how are they still in our environment? Why haven't they been taken out?" It all boils down to this right here. So there are over 85,000 man-made chemicals in the world. That's a little bit of where I'm hoping you're not going to get overwhelmed by this, because 85,000 is a big number. It would be hard to pinpoint where all of those are in our environment. So again, don't get overwhelmed. Of those 85,000, only about 1,000 or maybe 2% of those chemicals have been tested for safety. That's really kind of a problem. What actually happened, and this is strictly here in America, the Substance Control Act of 1976. About that time is when we kind of realized as a society that we had all of these chemicals that we're being exposed to on a daily basis. We wanted to figure out, hey, are these safe or not? Well, industry in America realized if folks found out how unsafe some of these chemicals were, they'd have to change their processes over. It might affect their products. Of course, it might affect their profitability. So the government stepped in and says, we need to do something about this. But if you've already been using these chemicals, we're going to assume they're safe. And so they're grandfathered in to what you're already doing. Moving forward, since 1976, they're doing the safety testing. But anything that was in use in products prior to 1976, grandfathered in, no testing at all. I don't know if you've ever seen any of the social media posts out there comparing ingredients list on foods here in America versus the same food in Europe. I know I've seen one on a cereal, and the ingredients list on the American package of cereal is, it's just multiple numbers of ingredients in it, and the same cereal in Europe is only just a handful of ingredients. It's because they watch their chemicals a little bit better than what we do, and they don't have the Substance Control Act. So there's fewer chemical exposure risks to products in Europe versus or in other parts of the country or parts of the world versus the products in America. That's really why. It's an unfortunate situation. I don't know that I would have had a better answer back in 1976, but that's why we are still being exposed to them. And that puts the ball in your court on how you can address them in your environment and what you can do to begin eliminating them. To do that, you got to kind of know what they are. So I'm going to give you a website. It is the word endocrine, www.endocrine.org/topics/EDC. endocrine disrupting chemicals like we've been talking about. So endocrine.org/topics/EDC. You're going to get a lot of information there on all of the different kinds of EDCs that are out there. Not necessarily what name brand products or specific brand products that they might be found on, more just kind of general categories that you can then begin doing your own research to see where your exposure level might be. These are just some of the more common ones. Atrazine is found in herbicides. A lot of the landscaping, gardening, farming chemicals have atrazine in it. Bisphenol A, BPA, that's a fairly common one that people have heard about. You've seen the water bottles that they'll be labeled BPA free. It's definitely one that you want to avoid. We're going to, we're going to talk about food storage in just a minute. But BPA is found in a lot of plastics. And if you then microwave food that has been stored in a plastic container, if you microwave it, the BPA is released into the food, and then you ingest it, and that's where it can cause its issues. Dioxins are a byproduct of combustion engines, so lawnmowers, chainsaws, cars, all of that can be producing dioxin. What else? Phytoestrogens, I already mentioned that. The phytoestrogen chemical that is in processed soy products. So any food product that has processed soy in it, and there's lots of them. If you see soy in an ingredients list, it's most likely processed. So any ingredient that has phytoestrogen is almost chemically identical to human estrogen. So this is one of the ones that mimics the normal hormone in the human body. Phytoestrogens mimic it. And that's a big one to stay away from. A little bit of the issues that women have with their cycle and so on and so forth can be traced to phytoestrogens. Again, short list. That website will really help you understand a little bit more of it. So please go ahead and do your own research, figure out which ones you might need to be paying attention to. Here's as far as a game plan. Here's some of action steps, if you will, things that you can take moving forward. Now that you know what endocrine disrupting chemicals are, kind of where they might be found, what do you need to do about them? Or how can you tackle them? Well, one thing that's I think it's kind of on the unfortunate side. Here in America, our healthier products tend to be a little bit more expensive than our non-healthy products. Who knows why, but that is what it is. So therefore, if you're like most folks, you still got to kind of pay attention to your budget. And you may be thinking, wow, there's so much to do. I don't even know where to start because it's all going to cost a little bit more money. This is what I call this is kind of your priority list. What I would do, what actually I have done with my family on the order in which that we kind of tackled getting rid of the endocrine disrupting chemicals in our lives. The first thing would be your food. Move as much away from processed foods as possible. What do I mean by processed foods? If it comes in a package and has an ingredients list, then it's processed. When you go to buy broccoli in the store, there's no ingredients list on a broccoli because all it would say would be broccoli. So if it comes in a package and has an ingredients list, then it's processed. You can be exposing yourself to the endocrine disrupting chemicals if you're buying and consuming a lot of processed foods. So that would be step number one, move away from processed foods. Step number two, under the food category, is move as much as you can over into organic. Organic is not going to have any of your herbicides and pesticides on the vegetables that we talked about. The hormones and whatnot that they put into meats is eliminated as well when you're buying organic. So that would be a big step as well, as moving over to organic. How do you know how pure and organic a food is? Truly, the only way to know is to grow it yourself. But of course, having a garden and all that kind of stuff, that's a big step. Some folks can't even do that. So I understand that. But as much as you can, do a little bit of research and figure out where you can get organic. The internet is great for information, that's for sure. So do a little research and figure out what kind of foods that you can start eliminating that you're currently using and moving over to more natural organic foods. I throw water into the food category as well because our tap water loaded with heavy metals, chlorine, fluoride. There's a bunch of different ones in there. So my encouragement there is to use filtered water, whether it's a whole house filtration system, whether it's just the little filter that's on your refrigerator to grab water from, the pitchers that, however you can filter your water. That's one of the best things that I think you can do as far as your water is concerned. I put skincare right there, and then laundry as number 3. The two of them are very, very close together because both of them we're putting stuff onto our skin. And whether you realize it or not, your skin, A, is part of the endocrine system, and B, it's also the largest organ in our body. So we absorb a lot of stuff through our skin. So soap, cosmetics, shampoo, lotions, anything that goes onto our skin, make sure you're paying attention to the labels on those. As far as laundry is concerned, the reason I say that is our laundry detergents have a lot of the endocrine disrupting chemicals in them. So that's one category that you need to pay attention to there. The good thing about laundry detergents, and then even cleaning products for that matter, there are a lot of companies now starting to produce non-toxic soaps, chemicals, or cleaners and that kind of stuff. And they're readily available at most of our major retailers. You don't have to dig around and find them because they're around. They're pretty easy. Clothing is a big one. If you can move to more natural clothing, cotton, wool, denim, linens, more of the natural products as opposed to the man-made clothing. Man-made clothing is loaded with chemicals as well. So the more that you can move into more natural materials for your clothing, again, that would be absorbed through your skin. So that's a good big step right there. Food storage and cookware. We already mentioned the plastic there. You should be storing your food, your leftovers and that kind of stuff should be stored in glass containers, not the plastics. And cookware, stainless steel and cast iron. That's really the way to go. Hopefully you're not cooking with Teflon. There's some utensils and that kind of stuff that would be better for you as well, but I would definitely move away from Teflon. That would be a biggie right there. And then if you're like me, gardening and landscaping, my wife and I do a lot of gardening, so we try to use as many natural chemicals there as possible, moving away from a lot of the toxic chemicals that can be used in the gardening and landscaping arena. Well, hopefully you found some information tonight that can be useful to you. I'm glad that you joined with us. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. You can find me on Facebook at Total Body Healthcare, Dr. Ed Thomas. My website is totalbodyhealthcare.com. So easily to send us an email. Shoot me any questions that you might have.